let's just cut to the chase. Borderlands 3 has probably got the worst story out of the series, which is a real shame since Borderlands 3 is easily the peak of the series when it comes to things like quality of gameplay, location, vault hunters, and arguably has some of the best consistency of quality when it comes to the add-on campaigns as well. Not as great as something like Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon's Keep, but nowhere near as bad as Mad Moxie's Underdome Riot, or Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt. Borderlands 3 definitely improves in a lot of areas of the formula, but there's one area that has definitely gotten worse. The writing. I say this as a fan of the series. While I love Borderlands 3 and think it's an overall great game, the writing and humour in this game is a bit... well, it's pretty bad.
Biggest dump ever! Right there!
There's certain points in this game where the writing is definitely below the bar and looks terrible when compared to previous games, with a lot of people putting the blame towards the poor use of previous characters, Ava's existence, and the overall story and a bunch of the side missions. If you need an example for this, my friend really enjoyed playing Borderlands 3 up until the point of experiencing the Big Suck side mission. It's optional, sure, but this alone sets the tone for the entire game, and it doesn't do the overall product any favours. What's a real shame about this is at points Borderlands 3 is really trying to be more serious out of the entire franchise, but with the death of some major characters, it gets overshadowed by something obnoxious. Oh, your favourite siren just died? Well, here's a funny montage YouTube clip. I think the biggest problem with the writing in this game is that it really does waste the potential of the main villains offered in Borderlands 3, the Calypso Twins. I've been thinking about this for a while now, but I genuinely think these two would have outdone Handsome Jack if done correctly. No, I'm serious, I genuinely believe these could have been more memorable than Handsome Jack. Instead, they're hated more than Commandant Steele. Which, do you remember her? No? Of course not, because she has no character whatsoever. It's really stupid. The game has everything set in place to give these two such a big threat towards the overall story, yet it just doesn't go anywhere. Instead, we're just left with a bunch of wasted opportunities, and the first stop would have to be the Children of the Vault. The Children of the Vault, or as it's often referred in game, the COV, are a cult of psychopaths and bandits who all follow under the leadership of the Calypso Twins. The twins offer the opportunity of a lifetime, allowing their followers to join them in opening the Great Vault. Also at a stretch it has another meaning towards the origin of the twins, but I'd rather not get into that. The Calypso Twins are basically a pair of Echonet streamers who have merged all the psychos of Pandora into the one group, with them doing anything and everything they demand. So they're basically just Twitch streamers, and the entire population of psychos are simps. I'm not kidding when I say that. Bandits will do almost anything and everything to please Tyreen and Troy. They even poke fun at it several times.
Hey, superfan! You sure you picked the right team? I mean, I get it, we all grew up wanting to be vault hunters, but I'm not a follower like you. I'm a god, and my followers will do anything I ask. Oh, here, quick demo! Hey you! Cut off your favorite leg!
Oh, Tyreen!
I didn't say both! He cut off both. Now he's trying to stand on his stumps.
And here lies the first problem. It's not that they're streamers, which is frankly an awful way to set up a cult in Borderlands, and that is a horribly dated joke when you look back at it in a few years, just like the double rainbow Easter egg in 2, but rather for a massive cult who managed to unite the entire planet of nutjobs together. There's very little proof to this. Sure, you're dealing with the COV pretty much for the entire game, but they come off as more of a side problem. When it comes to opening the vaults, you're normally too busy dealing with other issues like a corporate war or a family feud. Not to discredit those either, as those standalone stories are really good. But when it comes to actually dealing with the cult directly, the most action you're going to see is when you get towards the end of the game and you're saving Tannis from pain and terror, who, mind you, are criminally underappreciated and could have easily ran off with their own story all on their own. But while that isn't relevant, the lack of inclusion from them, especially when they're part of the COV, is. Unless you're hunting for the broadcast to switch off, you don't really know about their presence until you go to kill them. Thinking about it, if you look at the main story, there's only 2 bosses which are even relevant to the COV outside of the twins. Besides them, it's just either vault bosses or people who are working with the COV. They even missed a golden opportunity to have a one-to-one with each twin in the story. Even though they sort of blue ball you with a fight against Troy in Eden 6, that could have easily been a great opportunity to really build up the twins separately, especially when you consider the fact that Troy is also a siren.
Yeah, well, runs in the family.
When it comes to Troy, it's very strange, since he comes off as a bit of an underdog in this story. It's definitely an interesting idea when the game throws out lore previously that sirens are a rare species and can be only female and only 6 can exist in the world at one time, and then Troy comes along as a twin to a siren. So where does that leave you? Well, it leaves you with a great possibility and a great idea for the loophole to be explored in the story, and they definitely start to explore this midway into the game. You see that Troy is often referred to as a parasite and a leech. He's only alive because he leeches life from his sister. But things really start to develop because once Maya's killed off, her powers are absorbed, but not by Tyreen. They were absorbed by Troy, and it turns out he's a lot stronger with them.
I thought you could only take from me.
I guess it's any siren.
Come on, we got what we came for.
Yeah, a lot more.
Once you progress further into Eden 6, you'll then encounter Troy on a one-to-one cutscene, which at first you'll overlook, but on the second playthrough you start to notice something that's a bit more relevant towards the end of the game. So after gaining his own siren powers, Troy is now starting to edge towards the centre of the stage, rather than Tyreen, giving everyone the assumption that one way or another he is going to take control of the COV.
This is awesome. We haven't really had a chance to get to know each other, huh? Ty's been doing most of the talking. She does that, right? She's the center of the galaxy, and the rest of us just sort of orbit around her. But things are changing. Freaking look at me! I've never felt this good in my life! Whoa! What is this? What is this? Your siren friend? She didn't know what she had. With this power, I can pull the stars out of the goddamn sky. You know, Tyreen says we should let you keep playing along. Yeah, a little competition gets our followers all riled up. But I'm not one of them. No, not anymore. And I'm done getting table scraps.
Now, I don't want to take credit for this bit, but I recently watched a video by Mojo's, and they bring up a great point. If you pay attention to the plot, there's a recurring theme within the story that you'll hear over and over, and it's family. But not just family, betrayal. If you want some examples, Vaughn is betrayed by the Sun Smashers and is deposed as leader. Katagawa betrays and murders his entire family to gain power. Hammerlock's sister Aurelia not only betrays him but even tries to kill him. And then following this, Troy becomes a lot more involved in the conversations. Little things like adding jokes at the end to bug Tyreen, or even butting into the conversation entirely. Everything in this game pushes towards the eventuality that Troy is going to betray Tyreen. But in the end, he just dies. And it's not even an instant follow-up with Tyreen. Instead, she tries to kill you, and then you're left defeated until you hear the call. Yeah, this is my least favourite part of the story. To me, this is where the story really falls apart. I really do not like Typhon DeLeon for several reasons. Firstly, his overall story is crammed so poorly into a single game, which for any normal character would be fine. But with how big of an importance Typhon is to the entire story, let alone the entire Borderlands universe, Typhon shouldn't have appeared until the sequel, which is actually a joke they attempt to give at one point. So to recap quickly, Typhon DeLeon is a name you'll hear mentioned over and over again within the game's story, as he becomes a major role towards the end of the game. But like most people, you begin to wonder, who exactly is this guy? You've never heard of him mentioned before, so why is he so important now? Well, he's important because he's a Vault Hunter. But not just any Vault Hunter. Typhon DeLeon is the first Vault Hunter. Due to him only appearing at the end of the story, the game tries to explain his backstory with an optional collectible which you can find around each planet you visit. These collectibles are basically just podiums that work kind of like an echo log. Each level has 3 of them to find, and they each tell a segment of his adventures he had before embarking on a journey to find the homeworld of the Iridians, Necrotafeo. And from these logs you learn that Typhon DeLeon was a turd farmer.
My parents' turd farm wasn't far from here.
I swear, the writer of this game has a shit fetish. It's mentioned everywhere. But he's not just any old turd farmer, he's the turd farmer who went and found and opened the first vault on Promethea, marking him in history as the first Vault Hunter ever. A legacy that's never discussed by anyone ever until the third installment in a series, which makes even less sense when a character from the first game is fantasizing about him now. Anyway, as time goes on and opening more vaults, he eventually falls in love, and with his partner they go to Necrotafeo. And if you haven't guessed it by now in the story, when on Necrotafeo his wife gives birth to twins. Yes, the first Vault Hunter is the father of the Calypso Twins, and it's not surprising in the slightest. It's rather obvious throughout the story that the twins in Typhon were connected to one another, since the twins mention their childhood and father at points, and then the name Typhon DeLeon is just thrown around everywhere too much for it to be a coincidence. I think the idea of Typhon being the first Vault Hunter and that his stories corrupted his children into wanting power is a good one, and it's a brilliant idea, but in the game it was executed so poorly, and the main factor to this is the lack of involvement from Typhon throughout the story. Yes, he definitely jumps in towards the end, but surely he would be aware that his kids were trying to escape Necrotafeo, and why didn't he chase after them? If the twins could escape, so could he. It's such an obvious observation that in a post from Gearbox they addressed that the twins left him with nothing when escaping, but that still doesn't explain how they managed to leave. Maliwan weren't involved until after the events of Pandora, so surely they had other means of escaping the planet, and if so, why didn't he? The problem with introducing an important character from the beginning of a story midway into a series is that it can cause a ripple effect of plot holes throughout the entirety of the series, especially when he's still alive and the Legend of the Vault was always portrayed as a story of generations. It can also live on such a high level of expectations that the end result is just never satisfying. And with Typhon DeLeon, it stinks.
Aslan de Vegas shot my ship down. Well, I went and hid in a big old pile of turds.
So I know a few people are going to think this is pointless because it's best to ignore the story of Borderlands because the gameplay is where it shines. But I really think the world of Borderlands is more fascinating than you might think. Not sure the movie is going to prove this, but my point still stands. Also, in case anyone asks, I'm aware that a new chunk of the story behind the scenes has been shown off in the new DLC, and that includes stuff like Ava's possibilities of redemption and the bigger picture of the Great Vault and the events within the base game, but honestly, I couldn't find anything that really changed anything. At least for the better. Again, I can't stress this enough. I adore Borderlands 3. This entire franchise is easily one of my favourite looter shooters of all time. But it's such a shame the story is tarnished by such shoddy writing. The series started with a much more serious tone, and while I'm glad the sequel took it a bit more lighthearted, I think 3 forgot what made the world of Borderlands so interesting in aspects. Although I've played worse, and you know Outriders? Yeah, I got so fed up with playing that game I replayed Borderlands 3 and ta-da! Here's the video. Now when it comes to the rest of the DLCs, I think the writing improved a bunch and was definitely a lot of fun, so if you enjoyed the base game and got put off by the writing, don't shy away from the DLC stories, they're genuinely really good. But if you're curious and want a second opinion, I don't know, stick around. I might have more tales to tell.